Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The surface of Vorax 9 shimmered under the light of its binary stars, casting a harsh glow over the barren, radiation-scarred landscape. Winds whipped across the endless desert, carrying with them the faint hum of static electricity, a reminder of the planet's dangerous environment. For the human colonists who had chosen to call this place home, survival was a delicate balancing act. One wrong move, and the radiation that clung to the air like invisible poison would claim them. At the colony's core, Dr. Alyssa Crane stood in front of the massive, reinforced glass windows of her lab, watching the swirling dust storms in the distance. She felt a familiar tug of unease. Her hands covered in gloves rested lightly on the cold steel of the counter, her mind preoccupied with the data streaming across her terminal. The discovery that he made in the mines beneath Vorax 9 was unlike anything she'd ever seen before, and it had been hard to concentrate on anything else. Dr. Crane, Lena Cartershaw's voice interrupted her thought. Alyssa turned to face the young miner, her face pale from what Alyssa assumed was another long day in the hazardous conditions of the mine. Lena had been working on the deeper levels of the mine, exploring untouched sections of the planet, its crust in search of the rare minerals that had initially brought them here. "I've found something strange," Lena said, her voice tight with excitement and unease. She reached into her pack and pulled out a shimmering, glowing stone about the size of a fist. Alyssa's breath caught as she looked at it. It was beautiful, like liquid metal frozen in time, shifting in hue from silver to blue as it caught the light. "Trey, what is this?" Lena hesitated. "It felt alive almost when I touched it. It felt like it was moving." "Moving?" Alyssa repeated, incredulous. She grabbed a scanning device and ran it over the stone. The readings made no sense. High levels of radiation, but not the kind that was deadly to humans. Instead, it seemed to be something else entirely. "It's not from any of the known mineral deposits," Lena continued. "We dug it out from deep under the surface. I thought it was just another rock at first, but then I noticed it repairing itself." Alyssa's eyes widened. Lena nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "Yeah, I nicked a piece off with my pick, but within minutes, the stone looked like it was never touched. I swear it fixed itself." The implications hit Alyssa all at once. A material that could repair itself? The potential applications for medical technology alone were staggering. The ability to heal wounds, regenerate damaged tissue. If the stone saw properties could be replicated or harnessed, it could change the future of human civilization. "I'll need to run tests," Alyssa said, her mind racing. "Ari, if this is what you say it is, it could be groundbreaking." Lena nodded, but there was a shadow of doubt in her eyes. "I've then been feeling strange since I handled it." "Nothing major, just off. Maybe it's just the radiation, but I think you should be careful." Alyssa frowned, looking at the miner more closely. Lena's skin seemed to have a faint, almost imperceptible glow beneath it, like veins of light tracing her body. "Dear, how long have you been feeling this way?" "Since yesterday," Lena replied, "after I brought it back." "I'll run a full scan on you as well. Let's not take any chances." But Alyssa's excitement far outweighed her concern. She was already imagining the headlines back on Earth, her name forever linked to one of the greatest scientific discoveries in human history. Back in her lab, Alyssa wasted no time setting up the sample for testing. The stone, now under heavy observation, continued to glow with that ethereal light, almost as if it was aware of its surrounding. She extracted a small fragment, preparing it for a molecular analysis, while the rest of the stone remained under quarantine. Hours passed as data poured in. The mineral-fest structure was unlike anything she had seen before, a perfect blend of organic and inorganic compounds. It reacted to stimuli in ways that suggested it could learn, adapt, and evolve. But something else nagged at her, the readings on Lena's health scan. Elevated heart rate, increased muscle mass, a strange fluorescence in her blood cells. It was subtle, but undeniable. Lena's warning echoed in Alyssa's mind, but she pushed it aside. After all, science demanded risk. Without it, progress would stagnate. Captain Marcus Yates paced the command center, his sharp gaze fixed on the live feed from the colony's perimeter. The dust storms were getting worse, and the radiation levels continued to fluctuate unpredictably. Vorax 9 was not a place for the faint-hearted. The colonists had come here, knowing full well the dangers, but Yates had a responsibility to ensure that none of them met an untimely end, at least not on his watch. The door to the command center slid open and Alyssa stepped inside, her face flushed with excitement. Yates didn't need to ask to know that she was going to talk about her latest project. Crane, what now? He asked, though there was a hint of amusement in his voice. Despite their frequent disagreements, he respected her intelligence and drive. You are going to want to see this, she said, placing a small, glowing vial on the table in front of him. Yates frowned. What is that? An alien mineral, she explained. Lena found it in the mine. It has properties we've never seen before. Self-repairing, almost like a living organism. If we can study it, it could revolutionize medical science, maybe even technology. Yates eyed the vial warily. And what sound to capture it? Alyssa hesitated, just for a second. Tis it Lena second Marina. There have been some side effects. Nothing severe, just minor changes. I am monitoring it. Minor changes? Yates repeated. A Crane, this planet is already dangerous enough. The last thing we need is to start messing with something we don't understand. That sounds exactly why we need to study it. However, Alyssa countered. You'll understand it, we can control it. Imagine what this could mean for humanity, for Earth. We could save lives, cure diseases, extend human longevity. Yates ran a hand over his face, torn between his instincts and Alyssa's logic. He knew she was right about the potential, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with fire. Fine, he said at last, but I want full containment protocols in place. No one else comes into contact with that thing until we know exactly what it's capable of. Alyssa nodded, satisfied. As the days passed, the situation at the colony began to shift in ways no one could have predicted. Word of the discovery spread quickly, and soon every department was clamoring for access to the alien mineral. Engineers wanted to test its applications for machinery. Medics wanted to explore its potential for healing injuries. But the more they studied it, the more Alyssa began to realize that Lena's condition wasn't an isolated case. Other miners who had come into contact with the mineral, albeit briefly, started to report unusual symptoms. Heightened senses, increased strength, rapid reflexes. What had initially seemed like minor side effects now appeared to be something far more profound. And then Lena's condition worsened. It started with small changes, her skin becoming translucent in places, the veins glowing more brightly beneath the surface. But within a week, her physical appearance had begun to alter dramatically. Her eyes had taken on an unnatural luminescence and her muscles rippled with unnatural power. Her voice, once soft and measured, now carried a strange resonance that unsettled those around her. Dr. Crane's lab became a fortress of secrecy as she worked around the clock to reverse the changes. But the more she studied Lena, the more she realized that this transformation was no simple side effect. It was an evolution. The mineral was rewriting the very DNA of those exposed to it, merging with their biology in ways that defied explanation. What's happening to me? Lena asked one evening, her voice trembling as she looked at her reflection in the lab, smeared wall. Her hands shook as she touched her face, which had taken on an eerie, almost alien appearance. Alyssa stood behind her, struggling to find the right word. Your body is adapting, she said. Slowly is the mineral is merging with your cells. It's changing you. But why me? Lena demanded, her voice rising in desperation. Carol, why is this happening? Alyssa didn't have an answer. All she knew was that Lena was the first, but she wouldn't be the last. As Lena's transformation worsened, fear spread through the colony like wildfire. Whispers of her condition circulated among the colonists, and what had once been excitement over the discovery of the alien mineral quickly turned into paranoia. People who had come into contact with even the smallest trace of the mineral now found themselves under constant scrutiny, fearful that they might be the next to mutate. The once thriving research outpost began to fracture under the weight of fear and uncertainty. Lena had been placed in isolation, confined to the sterile environment of Dr. Crane's lab. Her mutations were more pronounced. Now her skin had taken on an almost crystalline sheen, and her movements were jerky and unnatural. It was as though her body was no longer her own, the mineral rewriting her every cell with each passing day. Dr. Crane worked tirelessly, her fingers trembling with exhaustion as she pored over data, searching for a way to reverse the process. The more she studied Lena, the more horrifying the truth became. The alien mineral wasn't just altering her biology, it was bonding with her at the molecular level, integrating itself into her very being. Every attempt Alyssa made to reverse the mutations only seemed to accelerate them. Alyssa had always been a woman of science, someone who believed that there was a rational explanation for everything. But now, as she stood over Lena's trembling form, she couldn't deny the fear that gnawed at the edges of her mind. What if this was beyond human understanding? What if the mineral had its own agenda, something far beyond their control? Captain Yates had grown increasingly concerned as well. He never trusted the alien mineral from the start, and now his worst fears were being realized. Crane, he said, stepping into the lab late one night, his expression grim. Jarrett, this has to stop. Alyssa looked up from her workstation, dark circles under her eyes. I'm doing everything I can, she said, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. But it's not that simple. The mineral is ... It's alive. It's not just a substance, it's something more. It's evolving and it's taking Lena with it. Then we need to shut it down. Yates insisted. Either seal off the mine, destroy whatever's left of that rocket, send it too dangerous. Alyssa hesitated, torn between her loyalty to scientific discovery and the undeniable danger that the mineral posed. If we destroy it now, we lose everything we've worked for, she said softly. Charles, this could be the greatest breakthrough in human history. Or it could be the end of us, Yates countered Dallas. You've seen what it's doing to Lena. How long before it spreads to the rest of the colony? We were sitting on a powder keg, and that thing is the mat. Alyssa stared at the glowing vials of mineral samples lined up on the counter, her mind racing. She knew Yates was right. The mutations weren't isolated to Lena. Others in the colony had started showing early symptoms, subtle at first, but unmistakable. If the mineral wasn't contained, the entire colony would soon fall victim to its effect. I need more time, she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. Yates shook his head. We don't have time. If you want, stop this. I will be. With that, he turned and left the lab, leaving Alyssa standing alone in the cold, sterile room, the hum of the containment units the only sound breaking the silence. For the first time since the discovery of the mineral, Alyssa felt truly powerless. In the days that followed, the situation in the colony deteriorated rapidly. More colonists began exhibiting signs of mutation, glowing veins, enhanced physical abilities, erratic behavior. The once orderly research base had descended into chaos, with small groups forming alliances based on their beliefs about the mineral. Some saw it as a gift, a way to transcend human limitations and evolve into something greater. Others, like Captain Yates, viewed it as an existential threat that needed to be eradicated before it consumed them all. Tensions reached a boiling point when Lena, now almost unrecognizable in her mutated form, escaped from isolation. Her strength had increased exponentially, and the containment unit that had once been her prison was no longer capable of holding her. She moved through the colony like a ghost, her glowing eyes watching from the shadows as fear and paranoia gripped the population. Some colonists sought her out, believing that she held the key to their own evolution. Others fled in terror, knowing that her mere presence signaled the spread of the mutation. Captain Yates organized a security detail, his soldiers armed with the latest weapons designed to neutralize any threat, human or otherwise. But even he knew that his forces were no match for what Lena had become. The mineral had given her strength beyond anything they could fight, and worse yet, she was no longer the Lena they had known. She had become something else entirely. Dr. Crane's attempts to contain the situation grew increasingly desperate. She had managed to isolate a small fragment of the mineral's molecular structure, hoping to find a way to neutralize its effect. But every test she ran only revealed more terrifying truth. The mineral wasn't just adapting to its host, it was learning. It was evolving faster than she could keep up with, and it was clear now that it had no intention of being controlled. As the colony descended further into chaos, Yates made his decision. He gathered what remained of his security forces and led an assault on the mine where the mineral had been discovered. Their mission was simple: seal off the entrance, detonate the explosives, and destroy whatever remained of the alien substance. Alyssa, realizing that the situation had spiraled out of control, followed Yates to the mine. As she arrived, the scene before her was one of devastation. Mutated colonists, now fully under the influence of the mineral, had gathered at the mine entrance, their glowing forms blocking the path. They had come to protect the mineral, viewing it as their salvation. They would not let Yates destroy it. Yates gave the order to fire, and the air was filled with the sound of gunfire and scream. The mutated colonists fought back with terrifying strength, their bodies impervious to the weapons the soldiers wielded. It became clear that this wasn't just a battle for the colony, it was a battle for survival. In the chaos, Alyssa spotted Lena standing at the heart of the mutated horde. She no longer resembled the woman she once was. Her body had been completely transformed, her skin now a reflective crystalline surface that shimmered with the same strange light as the mineral. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, and her movements were inhumanly fast and precise. "Lena," Alyssa shouted, pushing through the fray to reach her. Lena stopped. But the woman who turned to face her was no longer Lena. She was something more, something beyond human comprehension. "You don't understand," Lena said, her voice echoing with a strange resonance. "This is the future. We are becoming what we were always meant to be." Alyssa shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't you, Lena. This isn't what you wanted." Lena's glowing eyes flickered with something resembling sorrow, but it was fleeting. "I wanted to evolve to become better, and now I have." Before Alyssa could respond, Yates detonated the explosives, collapsing the mine entrance in a massive explosion that sent shockwaves through the ground. The mutated colonists screamed in unison, their connection to the mineral severed in an instant. Lena's form flickered, the glow in her eyes fading as she collapsed to the ground. As the dust settled, the few surviving colonists looked around in shock. The mine was sealed, the alien mineral buried beneath tons of rock, but the cost had been immense. Alyssa knelt beside Lena, still form, her heart heavy with the weight of what had been lost. The colony was in ruins, and the alien mineral, once a beacon of hope, had proven to be their undoing. In the weeks that followed, the survivors evacuated Vorex 9, leaving the planet and its terrible secret behind. But as Alyssa prepared to leave, she found herself drawn to her lab one last time. There, sitting on her workstation, was a small vial containing a single shard of the alien mineral, glowing faintly in the dim light. She picked it up, staring at it for what felt like an eternity. The weight of her decision pressed down on her. Destroy it, and the nightmare would end. Keep it, and the possibilities, both good and bad, would remain. Alyssa placed the vial in her pocket as she boarded the transport ship. The colony might be gone, but the mineral-sawing legacy would live on. And somewhere deep in the recesses of her mind, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held.